And remember what its origins are. Its origins, I'm not getting into that, I promise. Its origins are grassroots. Where the locals here, in this case here, Southwest Florida, we can come together. We don't have to go to Tampa. We don't have to go to Orlando. We don't have to go to Miami or Virginia or Las Vegas. We can have our own hacker conference here. I'll put my tennis shoes on later. But this is B-Sides. And the idea behind that is that we bring our community together. We bring our community together and we talk about the things that we find interesting. So although there's some talks from not from here, but the keynotes and some of the invited speakers are all local, at least part-time. And there's a lot of us here, we just don't have a place to congregate. So thanks to the university for giving us this opportunity. So let's give a round of applause to the university. You know, I want to acknowledge a few things, and it gives some notes here. So first of all, there's Wi-Fi. If you don't know it, there's information around here. And if you've been to DEF CON, DFIU with the Wi-Fi. If you don't know what that means, look it up. Hacker Tracker. If you want to know what's going on, look on Hacker Tracker. There's going to be food trucks this afternoon. They're going to be parked right outside for lunch. There are 2 CTFs going on, one in the morning starting here at 10, and then for beginners, and then for not beginners starting in the afternoon. There's a couple of events after this event. There's a drone party happening at the Air Arcade that Rochelle, you here? You'll see Rochelle, you can't miss Rochelle. She'll give you the details on that starting after this. We're also hosting a no host. You know what that means? It's, we're not paying the bar bill. But we got a lot of sponsors here who probably have an expense account. It's going to be at the social at Wings and Rings. And there's a QR code that we need a head count, give them a heads up, and there are coupons for like 20% off. I think it's $5 off at $20 or something like that, or that's 25%. There's also door prizes. How do you sign up for the door prizes? Right outside the store, a little bit to your left, there's a raffle where you fill it in. There's a lot of good stuff that they're giving away. Some training. I know there's some gift cards and that kind of stuff. For the staff, we have a lot of different color badges. Multicolored, it means you're the staff who put it together. The green badges are the volunteers. So for the staff and volunteers, please raise your hand. So if you have any questions, look for us. I don't go to this school here, so I won't know where to direct you, but I may direct you to somebody who does know. What else we have here? We have CyberGuard has some pretty good stuff. So you see their QR code looking around here. Please look that up. And then we have villages. We have 2 villages today. We have lockpicking and we have the career. And if you go to the career one, there's also some raffle stuff to go around. We talked about the CTF, and so let's talk about the speakers. We had over 100 people submit with about a 25% acceptance rate. So for those of you who are speaking, that's a pretty good cut. You made it. So thank you. With that, let's find out who traveled the farthest away for this event. I came from Naples. You came from Naples. Bradenton. Brooksville. Out of Florida. Sarasota. Texas. Ooh. Los Angeles. Where?
Europe.
You came from today for this trip alone. You came from Europe.
Pretty much.
There we go. We got a winner. Congratulations. So This conference did get a lot of attention. It's our first one. Next year, you can say you went to the first one. The year after that, you say you went to the second one. You can start tracking that. That's a big freaking deal. That's very important about this community. And you'll hear it throughout. There's still a lot of firsts to be had. A lot of firsts. Most of us who are professionals in this were the first in our job when we started. Then when we took it over from somebody else, we redefined it. We were the first, we were the first, we were the first. So this is our first, not our last. It's going to be bigger and better. And you're a part of something very big that we think is important. And hopefully we keep this momentum going throughout the year. So without further ado, let's get, did I miss anything? Michelle? They're telling me I did.
Oh, we have Discord.
We have a Discord. Look it up out there.
Yep, that's posted out.
It's posted outside.
Yep.
Thank all of our sponsors. You'll see them around. Please attend their table. All right, so let me introduce our guest speaker today. Jim Routh is a longtime friend. How did I meet Jim? And so how did we pick the key speakers? We said, who's in Florida? Who's from here? We don't want people who are not from here. Because we know there are enough good people here. So I thought of Jim right away. Why Jim? Over a decade ago, when I was with the Army, doing a lot of things with cyber for the first time, I was asked to put a conference together to get about the 75 most influential people in cyber, both in private sector and in government. Jim was one of those people that was recommended to me. Jim has crossed over in cyber multiple times. What do I mean by that? It's for those of you who have been in a while, you really kind of get a track. I do this in cyber for this industry. I do this in cyber for that industry. But as you get senior, to go from one to the other is very difficult because there's so much specialization. Please silence all your phones. Jim has crossed over from the top of financial sector to health sector to insurance, and now advises multiple organizations. He is not only one of the leaders in our field nationally, and I mean, look at his bio, we'll see that. I'm privileged to call him one of my mentors and friends. So without further ado.
Thank you, appreciate it. Hey, thanks for our sponsors today. Always thanks for you and the staff for putting this together, and special thanks to all of you for being here this morning. We were in the furthest trip, and that's impressive. By the way, these seats up here, I think you paid extra to sit here, is that right? Yeah, so if you do, you have to pay a little fee. Of course, I'm a cyber hacker, so I take credit card. A little bit about my background, and then you'll understand the topic that I'm going to cover today. But that will only happen if my clicker works.
I'll click for you if you need me to.
You know what? Let's put this into the slideshow. No?
Okay, who hacked it?
Okay, you know what?
Right, yeah. So I'll get started. The slides will catch up. I'm going to talk to you about the future of cybersecurity, but it's actually the near future of cybersecurity. And I'm going to talk from a chief information security officer perspective, because that's my background. But it's really for anyone in cybersecurity. This is how cybersecurity is evolving, and it kind of has implications in terms of you and in terms of your professional development. So I'll give you some context for that. And the interesting part is that changes that I'm gonna be referring to actually don't necessarily have anything to do with AI. So AI is accelerating it, but these changes were underway prior to the introduction of generative AI into the environment that is changing the way all of us work and live on a daily basis. So Dean, thank you, appreciate that. We're good. So I worked at a number of large companies as a CISO, spent 25 years doing that. And I also formed the Health ISAC, and I was a member of the board of the FSISAC for many years. That's Information Sharing Analysis Centers and kind of industry focus. There's about 18 of them for different industries. I'm currently the Chief Trust Officer for a company called Savient in the identity security space. I serve on a number of boards. I teach cybersecurity at NYU in the School of Engineering. And I'm a mentor of about 120 cybersecurity professionals like you, and about 40 of them are CISOs. I'm also a resident of Southwest Florida, have been for about a dozen years. That picture's from Miami. I thought it's a good picture of my wife, so that's why I put it up there. But I'm from Naples, as Carlos said, and living here, by the way. The topic that I'm going to cover today is in a paper that you can download and get anytime you want. I have a number of papers that I write. When you get old, and I qualify, you want to pass along information to others. And so you write papers. So some of the papers are long, some papers are short, but we get to see that. So being a resident in Southwest Florida, and I've been coming here for 40 years, been resident for maybe a dozen years. What I've learned and made adjustments is that the climate has a big influence on how we live on a daily basis. And that's increasing. So more and more, the decisions that we make about where we live and how we live are intertwined with the changing climate that we have and the warming of the water that's causing a number of different impacts. It's causing damage to coral, it's causing more intense storms, it's causing more frequent storms, and it's causing red tide, which is an algae bloom that we get usually once or twice a year. And so climate is, as it's changing, is influencing how we live, and it's influencing the decisions that we make. And so these are resilient practices that are part and parcel of our living experience in Southwest Florida. The good news is we have information available today that we didn't have in years past in terms of immediate source information for storms, which is really helpful. And I'll tell you a story. 5 years ago, remember Ian? Ian was a pretty big storm that hit this area particularly. And at the time, my wife flew down. We were up north. She flew down a couple of days before the storm. She got her mom, who lives here, or at the time did, and she drove her mom over to Fort Lauderdale and rode out the storm. Now, the evacuation route for her mother's building was actually to go to Orlando. But what happened with Ian? Well, Ian hit right here and then moved right across the state east and right to Orlando. So that wasn't a good path, and we had to make an adjustment at the end. And so she ended up going to Fort Lauderdale. Unfortunately, they were fine. But the one thing we learned, this was 5 years ago, we didn't know it at the time, but we owned a Tesla. And it turns out that Tesla vehicles and salt water don't mix very well. You've heard of that, right? Well, we had no idea. And it turns out that, we moved our car, to Fort Lauderdale, and we were good. But now we have to think about our car and how to protect our car. So we're on the second floor of it's essentially high ground. Anything in above 10 feet is high ground in Southwest Florida. So we had to think about that. But the point is that I live in a condo, so we worry about our condo, we made some adjustments for the weather. So we have a, what we call this, shield, that comes down right over our one eye. The building that we're in has a resilient plan, and they've actually planted native plantings, because in Ian, all of their landscaping was washed out because of the surge. And they have a generator as well that they test all the time. The development that we're in, Pelican Bay, they have a resilient plan that's constantly been upgraded and changed, and every year they make adjustments. And then the county that we're in also has a resilient plan. So resilient practices are baked into how we live in Southwest Florida. The development that I'm in was built in the 80s, and they decided to have this mangrove area that was preserved. And so it's a conservation area. Well, turns out that this is a great protection vehicle for storms. So this is the view out of my window. And there's a pretty significant buffer for storms that hit the coastline as a result of it. So resilient behaviors are the norm in Southwest Florida. And so let's translate that to cybersecurity, because there are cyber resilient behaviors that we should strive for. And these are just 6 that I chose here. One of the things that I realized, there are some enterprises where the senior executives publish a vision, a strategic vision for the entire company. And as you go through the year, if there's any information that surfaces that's inconsistent with the vision, it gets suppressed and discouraged. And that's actually a behavior that reduces that enterprise's ability to be resilient in the face of cyber incidents. Because you have to be able to understand that there are problems and there are incidents, and you have to recover and be resilient in how you recover from those incidents. And so you have to be able to acknowledge that there's a problem. And frankly, the culture should support anyone stepping up and trying to solve that problem. So that's a resilient behavior that's part of an enterprise. Now, I'm going to choose the 6th one here, because my guess is you haven't heard this before. Has anybody ever heard of the digital immune system? Probably not. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about what that means from a cybersecurity standpoint. And this is the evolution, the change, and the maturity of cybersecurity practice in the introduction of this. So it's very similar to your human immune system. So the way your human immune system works is that your bone marrow actually produces white blood cells when you're threatened with bacteria or virus that gets into your system. And you don't have to tell your bone marrow to do that. It automatically produces the white blood cells, which create antibodies that fight the virus or bacterial infection that we're dealing with. Now, that happens automatically. There's nothing conscious that you have to do. And once the infection is contained, then there's an improvement in your health, but there's some memory associated with that. And that's what happens when you take vaccines. And your immune system actually remembers how to deal with that particular virus or bacterial infection, and you don't have to worry about that. You're essentially healed and you're preserved, and that's the way the immune system works. So a digital immune system is very similar in that it's a set of practices and automated technology that responds in the event of a threat. And you don't have to consciously initiate that response. That response is automatic, and it happens without any human intervention. And so this is where we're headed from a cybersecurity standpoint, in building capability that essentially responds and reacts in real time without humans that have to initiate that response. And ultimately, this is totally different from the approach that's in place today. I'm calling it a conventional approach. The conventional approach says that you have tools that do detection, and the tools tell you when you have alerts or potential threats. And usually that's fed into a SOC analyst, and that SOC analyst has to wrap context around that and figure out what the implications are for the enterprise, and then take action. And so that action is initiated by a human. So that's the normal cycle of the way every large, small, medium-sized enterprise protects themselves. And our cybersecurity practices, as they've evolved, are based on this model of feeding information into somebody who's really smart and can wrap context around and take appropriate action. Now, this cycle takes about 2 or 3 weeks in every alert or incident that you have to deal with. And so the problem with that is that that takes a lot of time. And it turns out that it's an approach that's based on work that was done back in the 70s. So I thought it was appropriate to pick an advertising campaign from the early 70s. Now, I can tell just by looking at the audience here that none of you remember this because this is before your time. But when Life cereal was introduced into the market, they had this notion of it was a healthy cereal, but it also tastes good, that kids would like it. So they introduced it through an advertising campaign that said, "Give it to Mikey." So Mikey is this little kid here, and there are 3 brothers, and the 3 brothers looked at Mikey and said, "We're not trying this cereal, but give it to Mikey, he'll try it." And sure enough, Mikey tries it because he'll be getting. So Mikey tries it and he likes it. And so the brothers step back and say, "Oh, he likes it." So that was like a campaign. Well, cybersecurity is based on this model where we feed information into somebody like Mikey. And then Mikey has to decide what action to take. And the more information that we provide, the more it goes to Mikey. And that's the fundamental bottleneck. Because when we have to feed information to a human, humans don't work 24/7. Humans take PTO. Humans don't work on weekends, right? But models and data do. And that's important because our threat actors that we deal with on a day in, day out basis, well, guess what? They operate in a different time frame. Now, ransomware as a service threat actors have drastically reduced the time to impact from 48 minutes to 18 minutes. And what that does is it makes our traditional or conventional model obsolete. Why? Because it takes us 2 weeks. So if this is happening that quickly, they're also using generative AI capability to attack us. So over 50% of the ransomware as a service attacks today are using AI, and that's going to increase. So they're going to get faster and better at what they're doing. Now, we're also making it kind of easy for them. We're serving up credentials. So if you're a threat actor and you're using a credential in an environment, you're not detected because you're legitimate, or at least that's the theory, because you have the credential. So they're using credentials 80% of the time. And when they don't use credentials, you can buy admin credentials for a pretty reasonable price. Now, when you're in an extortion business, you're getting some pretty good money in extortion mode. So you can afford to pay $5,000 to get admin credentials to get into a system and be undetected. So the old model, the conventional approach of feeding data into a SOC analyst to analyze that, correlate all of the data, decide what action needs to be taken, and then initiate that action, which takes weeks, is obsolete. So the model that I want you to think about is the implementation of this notion of a digital immune system, which allows you to not have humans depend upon your response. In fact, you have data that's driving this. So the way this works, I'm going to give you a specific example here. You've all heard of privileged access management, PAM, right? So what I'm suggesting is a modest enhancement of conventional PAM capabilities. So the way PAM works is you have access to the network, you want an additional entitlement, and when privileges are something that's necessary, you make a request for that entitlement, that request goes through, it gets approved, you then offer up another factor of authentication, usually a password, and you get the entitlement for a period of time, 8 hours, couple of days, whatever it is, right? Well, that's the traditional, basically putting a moat inside and building a password vault to control the distribution of the entitlement. And that's traditional PAM. But if you add one little feature, which is to measure the online activity of the person that's requesting the entitlement while they're using the entitlement, and then compare that to a pattern that's predetermined based on what their normal behavior is, you can see deviation from that pattern. And if that deviation is significant enough, so it hits a threshold, you can trigger an automated workflow. In this case, we can revoke the entitlement if the behavioral pattern doesn't match the established pattern. And that can happen using math. And it turns out that math and computers, they work really well together and they're very fast. So we can make this decision in milliseconds. And I say we make this decision, we're actually not making the decision. The trigger is from a threshold that we numerically represent. We can adjust that at any time, but that trigger creates the automatic workflow that automatically revokes the entitlement. This eliminates the possibility of ransomware as a service happening. Now, what I've just described doesn't require a special product. It only requires some understanding of data science fundamentals, of looking at behavioral data, online behavioral data, and comparing that to actual data, streaming data, and then finding deviation. And that's the foundation for building a digital immune system. So there are products that allow you to implement and do this. So you can go buy a product, but you don't have to buy a product. You just have to think a little bit differently and get away from the give it to Mikey mentality of conventional control and design controls that operate in real time, which is part of your digital immune system. Here's another thing, dynamic provisioning. So once again, I have a network access, I need some sort of entitlement, I need access to another database of some kind, I put in a request. In the conventional world, that request goes to a data owner and goes to my boss, and they approve that, assuming that entitlement is justified, and then that's provisioned to me, and that process typically takes a week to 2 weeks in most enterprises. Now, when I was at Aetna, just for kicks, I decided to count all of the wait time that was in every entitlement request at a simple point in time, and I added it all up. And the total wait time across the enterprise was 325 years. That was built in to the provisioning process, a 325 cumulative year wait. And when you think about it, who are the people that are part of the process? Well, they're the data owners and the senior executives. And what are they doing? They're spending their time looking at an email and saying, yes, Jim can have access to that, or no, Jim can't have access to that. So that's the provisioning process, right? So instead, if we look at the pattern of behavior for Jim in this case, and simply said that if that's moderate to low risk in terms of the profile, anytime Jim asks for an entitlement, we're going to give it to him automatically, no human involved, no approval, no workflow that goes through email. We're just going to give him access. And we're going to do that because from a risk standpoint, that's a reasonable risk to take. Now, we'll trust by verify. So while Jim's using the entitlement, we'll measure his behavior against the normal pattern for Jim. And if there's a significant deviation, we'll revoke that entitlement, just like what we did before. But in the meantime, what happens is all those requests get automatically fulfilled. So nobody's waiting 2 weeks to get access. And they get their work done a lot more quickly. And 80% of these transactions cost nothing, close to zero. When a human is involved, the provisioning costs money. But when no humans involved, it costs pennies. And so there's a significant savings from an operating cost standpoint and a huge gain from a productivity standpoint. Oh, did I tell you the byproduct? There's better security, there's more resilience as well. So you don't have to approach something like this, a use case like this, and say, oh, we're going to improve cybersecurity, got to do it. No, you don't even mention that. You just say, we're going to save operating costs. And by the way, when you say those words, save operating costs, you get a lot of people's attention in enterprises today, specifically the CFO. And they're going to say, yeah, whatever it is, do it. And so you're basically selling an advanced capability, a resilient behavior based on the opportunity to save money. And that's really impressive. So here's the third example. By the way, there are hundreds of examples like this. So I've just chosen 3 to kind of illustrate them. So in this case, we have a SOC analyst, traditional SOC analyst. And normally they would review alerts and they decide what actions to take based on rapid context around the information. And in this case, I'm going to say, let's use some of that generative AI capability that's available today. And there's lots of products that do this today that we can choose from that basically say, we'll gather the information from multiple systems, we'll do the correlation, and we'll serve up a recommendation to the SOC analyst. And the SOC analyst is going to look at the recommendation and say, you know, in this situation, that's a good idea. That makes sense. Let's do that. But they also have a choice of saying, if this situation happens again, automatically do this. Don't ask me or don't make a recommendation, just do it every time. So if the conditions are the same action gets taken. And over time, what happens is you're building up an inventory of automated workflow as part of your digital immune system. Because it doesn't require a human either decide to take the action or take the action. So you're operating faster, you're building more resilience into your enterprise. But as I mentioned, you're also doing it at a lower cost. So all 3 of these examples cost less money to implement. Even if you have to spend money to buy a product to do this, the cost of that is offset by both the operating cost reduction and the productivity gain you get. So these are the principles of building a digital immune system. And it's not a one-size-fits-all model. There are hundreds of controls that you can design that follow the same model and do not require humans to push the transactions to make resilience. Humans are always going to be slower than machines and slower than data. And, you know, we're really good at a lot of things, but we're going to be slower than machines and That's when that's not gonna change. So first and foremost, we're trying not to design core controls that require humans. Humans to intervene, humans to interpret, humans to respond and react. And the more we can do that, the less dependent on the humans we are, so the humans can actually do higher level things and use their analytic skills to have more improvement opportunities. So we get better fulfillment as employees, and we get higher level responsiveness from cybersecurity standpoint. You can do this with models, data and models, and machine learning algorithms. So the technology to do what I'm describing, implementing a digital immune system, it's been around for 10 years. So it's not new, and it's pretty practical today. You can decide to use generative AI, and there are opportunities to do that. I gave you that one use case. There's certainly more. So you can certainly take that approach, but you don't have to. You don't need AI for this. You just need data science fundamentals. So these are the benefits. Serving up an opportunity to save money in any size enterprise today, that's really attractive to senior leaders. So you're going to get a response. When you say we have to do this because it's important from a cybersecurity standpoint, we have to manage the risk for the enterprise, all of which is true, it doesn't get the same response. So, no. When you say you save money, that gets a nice favorable response. The secondary factor is you get productivity gain. And that productivity gain often in cybersecurity has to do with senior leaders or senior managers or senior executives, whatever you call them. Well, they're the ones that get a lot of money. So you get more productivity for them that delivers more value into your enterprise. And the third outcome is more resilient behaviors, right? And that are sustainable. So data science is foundational to cybersecurity. And when I learned cybersecurity, they didn't tell me. And when you learn cybersecurity, I don't think they told you I did that. So I'm telling you that data science is foundational to cybersecurity. So if you're a cybersecurity professional, read up on data science. There's three types of people in cybersecurity. There's cybersecurity professionals that really understand data scientists and love data science. And those are our data scientists. And there's about 10% of you out there. Then there are people that understand the fundamentals of data science. There's about 60 or 70% of them out there. And then there are those that hate statistics, models, numbers. They hate data science. And for those people, you just have to be friends with the other people in the other category. And that's what you need to survive. And if you're early in your career, you should be thinking now, today, invest in understanding data science fundamentals. And the more equipped you are in understanding data science, the more equipped you're going to be to design controls that are part of your digital immune system and are more cost effective and more resilient. So recruit data scientists if you're in a cybersecurity. This is the message to the CISOs. Recruit data scientists. When I was at Aetna, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, first person I hired. The very first person I hired was the data scientist. You didn't have to pay extra to sit up your lead. That's brilliant. Great issue. Yeah. Data science person. When I went to Mass Mutual, what was the first person you hired? Huh? You got to yeah, data scientist. Over all of the specialized skills in cybersecurity, data science is foundation. So I have to master that and allow you to control, design the right controls. The model is basically very simple. Capture streaming data, compare it to behavioral patterns, deviation, where you can adjust the mathematical score for the deviation. Now triggers automated workflow. Doesn't have to be a single automated workflow, it could be multiple automated workflows. So the mandate for CISOs today is similar to 10 years ago, CIOs had the same mandate. CIOs were told, do more with less. CISOs today, they're asked to do more with less. Why? CISO organizations, cybersecurity that are more mature, there's companies that are spending millions of dollars a year on cybersecurity capabilities, and the stakeholders are basically saying, what do I get for that money? And instead of saying, yeah, 10, 15, 20% increase year over year in cybersecurity budgets, they're saying, no. Look, I'm willing to spend, make some investment available, but I'm not spending 15% increase all year. Our business will not support that. So CISOs have been asked to do more with what they have. This allows you to do more with what you have. In fact, you not only can improve cybersecurity across the enterprise, you can do it at a lower cost. That's pretty compelling. So this is where you find the white papers, and we have time, fortunately, where you can ask some questions about what I've just shared. And I don't see anybody here with their hand up. You? No. If you just a second. So ask a question or tell a joke, either one of those things. I'm fine either way. So go ahead. Yeah.
Why don't we just get rid of some of these troublesome humans?
Ah, screw everything up, don't they? Yeah, there's that is something we can laugh at, but the reality is, this is where AI is excelling. AI is changing the way we work in live, and it's changing. It's profound. Like I remember the day, and the ancient, yes, but when you did a search query, you got a string of URLs, and that's all you got. And that's search of the past. Search today is enhanced with AI, and it's giving you applications and things you can do. And that search of the future is changing the way we live. And so the reality is we're all changing the way we work and the way we live. And if you're not doing that proactively, I mentioned this earlier with AI, start, because that's the journey. You will never be laid off. If you understand how to use AI to change the way people work, you won't be laid off, and at any time in the future. But you have to make yourself resilient by making that investment. Now, the data science part of this doesn't need AI. But if you have AI capability, you're building resilience into your professional career. And that's a good investment to do. Other questions? Jokes? Yeah. I'll go.
Yeah, I got a question. No, it's not really so much a question, but what you're talking about, the immune system and with data scientists and consolidating into doing less, does that mean we have more of a competition for that type of job?
For data scientists?
Data scientists
Or
or
cyber enhancement?
cyber enhancements. So does that mean, instead of hiring 3 data scientists, we can just hire 1 data scientist to get it done quicker with AI?
So there's a number of things in your question. Number one is, yes, you can hire fewer people. You don't need the large number of staff in a cybersecurity organization if you upgrade the skill and use data science to do that. You can use AI, which is related to data science, but different, to have the same outcome. So you can do this with fewer people. You can do it with fewer people that actually are more fulfilled in the type of work that they do. So there's not a whole lot of downside to making this transformation from a human perspective. There are people that will not make the investment. And you have to have some sensitivity if you're a leader to them, because they could be at a point in their life where they don't have the capacity to invest. So I'll give you an example. Somebody's been in their job for 20 years. It's a legacy kind of job of legacy infrastructure, but they know it really well inside and out. And they come to work each day knowing that they can contribute something that not everybody can. But they've been told that they've learned that their parents have fallen on health issues that are significant, And they have to start supporting their dependent parents and spending a lot of time with them. So they look at this, they say, I go to work, I wanna get out of work as soon as I can, so I gotta go home and I gotta take care of my parents. And that's becoming more of a full-time. They don't have a lot of capacity to invest in detuning their skills. So they're gonna fall by the wayside. As a leader, you have to have some sensitivity to that and try to create opportunities where they can do that. But recognize that the data science driven controls of the future aren't going to be done by them. And hopefully, if you're, effective at, making a commitment to them as humans, we'll make that transition. But it's not for everybody. Those that are proactive are gonna thrive. Those that are not proactive and not interested in learning AI, not so much. Other questions?
We'll go speed round, last question.
Cool.
Slightly similar to that too, in Mass Mutual, recruiting those early data scientists. What was part of your recruiting narrative?
Yeah.
How are you getting data scientists to come to your cyber organization? And I ask that because a lot of our business is technical recruiting and staffing.
Yeah.
And we don't see their requests a lot even now.
Yeah,
So I was curious how you position that to those early data scientists.
that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. So number one, I never looked for data scientists that understood cybersecurity because they were too difficult to find out. Now, let's take life insurance in this business. Life insurance is all about underwriting and what's the skill set that's underwriting risk? Statistics, which is data science, right? So there was already a pool of data science that was readily available. What I had to do was attract them to cybersecurity. So if you talk to any data scientist and you say to them, would you like an opportunity to add context to your role and learn some different functional expertise on the foundation of your data science skill? The good data scientists that are really motivated, they're going to say, absolutely, right? So you're actually giving them a kind of saying, come and learn cybersecurity. So you just have to be friendly enough to welcome them in. Now, data scientists, or what is cyber people come like this anyway, but they're a lot. Right? They have odd behaviors, right? So you have to tolerate some odd behaviors. But if you welcome them into your world, they are tremendous in helping you design controls that implement a digital immune system. If nothing else but improve the data quality of what you provide, that's a benefit. But on top of that, if you allow them to influence how you design controls, you'll get those massive benefits like we talked about. So that's a great question. Thank you. Next up, I think we're all in the breakout groups.
At 10 o'clock, we're upstairs in the classrooms, right on your schedule. Jim, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I forgot to acknowledge one special group, the people who made your badge. If you're here, raise your hand. You might be outside, so thank you and thank them. Again, thank you. It's not an awesome conference, it's fine, you're sitting on schedule. Your schedule has all the times. Beginner CTF is in here.
Mon is upstairs, ready for the first recording. He just said to stop the recording.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
Perfect.